In a world with so many movies to choose from, one hero will rise. Ladies and gentlemen,
The Movie Wire Podcast
with Justin Vincent.
Fragile. It must be Italian.
I'm Buddy the Elf.
We're gonna have the happiest Christmas.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal, and a Happy New Year.
Oh my God, I shot my eye out.
I give you the Griswold family Christmas.
I say bah, humbug.
and happy holidays, and welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. With the start of the last month of 2024's films, I bring you 3 brand new reviews to kick off your holiday season. 2 new in theaters and 1 now available to stream. This week on the show, the ocean is calling, but now it must be tamed in Disney's Moana 2. A brilliant mind trapped within, yearning to be heard in the Disney Plus original, Out of My Mind. And finally, the greatest story ever told by the worst kids in the history of the world in the world's greatest Christmas pageant. We've got a lot to cover this week, so let's jump right in. Ready for my verdict? Let's get into it.
Out of the windows to watch a roar and a bursting of flames.
The Movie Wire Podcast.
With Justin
You need people like me.
The podcast for hot and trending movies.
The Wire.
And here we go.
Nobody is ready for the mayhem and surprises that ensue when 6 of the worst youngsters disrupt the town's yearly Christmas performance. Based on the 1972 children's book of the same name, is the best Christmas pageant ever.
Okay, everyone. For as long as I can remember, our little town has loved Christmas. And nothing is more important than our annual Christmas pageant.
The pageant is sacred.
Special mention to Grace for volunteering to direct the pageant.
But this year, the Herdmans changed everything.
Now. The Herdmans are absolutely the worst kids in the history of the world. Hey! Give it up, Charlie! You ready for this? You're gonna be in your Bible play. This is gonna be a real disaster.
That's the spirit. Would anyone like to volunteer for Mary and Joseph?
Who's Mary? Baby Jesus' mom?
Elmer, you usually like playing Joseph. Suppose that's that then.
The Herdmans shouldn't be here.
They're a poor influence. It might be the first Christmas pageant in history where Joseph and the wise men get in a fight, and Mary hightails it with the baby.
$5 say they burned down the manger.
This year, we get to be someone else, live a different life, become someone new.
Why are they still here?
Jesus was born for the Herdmans as much as he was for us. We'll be missing the whole point now if we turn them away.
I'm not quite sure what's gonna happen. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Because Mary and Joseph weren't so sure either.
She's crying. Mary's crying.
It's going to be the best Christmas pageant ever. Today we're going to ignore everything except blood.
Oh, what? Come on!
Now that's a pageant I'd actually like to see.
Now, Christmas movies over the years have gotten smaller and smaller in theatrical releases and have been shoved and devolved to merely just a rinse and repeat formula that are pushed to streaming services that seem to, even most of the time, completely miss the point of giving that feeling of Christmas or the moral lessons of what Christmas is actually about. If I have to watch one more damn Christmas movie that surrounds two opposite people that use the holiday season to justify a false romance or come together to save a pet shop, town, toy store, ice cream shop, a damaged man, a heroin factory, whatever it may be they want to save this Christmas, my Christmas wish will be to have three spirits come visit me. One to gouge my eyes out, one to take my hearing, and the final ghost is just there to slap the living shit out of me. But you know what? In complete fairness, studios and films have completely milked the idea factory of Christmas. Thus, this year, how we get The Rock in green and red leather with a weightlifting Santa in Red 1, and Satan Santa in one of the worst Christmas movies of all time in Dear Santa. That review coming soon. Then, once in a while, we get a film that really does bring on that moral do-good Christmas feeling that takes us away from the mental stress and the materials and brings us back to morals. Last year, we had one of my favorite films of the year, and it was a Christmas movie, The Holdovers. And the year prior, we have a movie in its rarity that I revisited and corrected my review of, knowing I was too hard on it. And it's a rarity that I'll go back and admit that I was wrong with the review, but I was too hard on this film, and that was with Apple TV Plus's musical Spirited. With the exception of me at the time, this became a household favorite. And I'll have to admit that it did grow on me. Now, when it comes to the greatest Christmas pageant ever, there is a line delivered in the film, which quotes, "I'm not quite sure what's going to happen," and maybe that's a good thing, because Mary and Joseph didn't know what was going to happen either. This is a line delivered by Judy Greer, who plays Grace, a mother of two kids, Beth and Charlie, played by Molly Bell Wright and Sebastian Billingsley Rodriguez. Grace volunteers to take over the town of Emmanuel's annual church Christmas pageant for its big 75th anniversary, after the director has an unfortunate accident. Of course, this line is delivered after chaotic events and situations happen where Greer is unsure of what's going to happen next. And this is a line of many that will be delivered in a holiday feel extravaganza to help support the messaging of what Christmas is all about in this film. And even though we have seen this formula before in a Christmas movie, we have seen this style of self-narration of our grown-up Beth character voiced by Lauren Graham that many will compare this movie with feelings of A Christmas Story. But the main difference being we're hearing the inner thoughts of Beth talk about moral lessons, her family experiences, her experiences with our problem children. And these thoughts are leading to a moral lesson, not just an experience that we saw in A Christmas Story. And when we talk about Christmas moral lessons, we're not just focusing on the experiences, especially by her mother, Grace, who has to follow the pressures of her church to execute the pitch-perfect Christmas pageant. And the town puts pressure on Grace that they are very clear. They don't want anything different than they have seen in the last 75 years. But Grace is put up to the challenge when a group of 6 unruly, mischievous children who are universally feared by their classmates, teachers, and basically anyone who encounters them. These kids, Imogene, Ralph, Leroy, Gladys, Oli, and Claude, are notorious of their wild antics, from stealing lunch money to setting off fire alarms for fun. Naturally, from the outside looking in, these are the last group of kids you'd want in your Christmas pageant. The Herdmans end up joining the church led by the eldest child, Imogene, played brilliantly by Beatrice Schneider, in hopes to star in the Christmas pageant with no knowledge of the story of Christmas. Now, it's merely impossible to have a Christmas movie in our times with a unique formula, and though the film does follow some of the same tropes that we have seen before, but what the greatest Christmas pageant does differently compared to other Christmas films is that it may give us some dialogue to help support the Christmas messaging, but it feels fresh and new because the situations that are presented are not over the top, and the situations and the outcomes feel earned without situations that don't feel cliche. But here is where it's really smart when it comes to the writing of Platt F. Clark, Darren McDaniel, and Ryan Swanson, who all have limited writing credits here, is the fact it's a movie that's around religion but never feels like it's preaching to a specific audience. It has a proper balance to appease both churchgoers and the general moviegoer. And at times it does poke fun at the churchgoer without insult, at those that take traditions and scripture to a strict contradictory level. At the heart of the best Christmas pageant ever is about finding beauty and meaning in the most unlikely places, even for those that use church as a status symbol. What starts as a story about a group of kids who have zero clue about the true meaning of Christmas turns into something unexpectedly profound and touching. As our troublemaking kids, the Herdmans, learn about the Christmas story, In their own unique way, of course, they start to develop a sense of empathy and curiosity. And when it comes to the stubborn, troublemaking persona of these characters, the film never really breaks down the walls of these character personas, is never forced or feels the need to give us "it's a wonderful life" feeling. The personas of these characters stay intact, but they give us a subtle level of understanding and sympathy with these characters. The brilliance of the best Christmas pageant ever lies in the ability to take a story that could have been predictable or even cliche and turn it into something that is both funny and deeply meaningful. The Herdman children, who at first are very unlikable and seem like nothing more than troublemakers, gradually reveal their humanity through other characters. They might be loud, unruly, and clueless about the Christmas story, but their honesty and lack of pretense make them more relatable than the well-behaved characters in the story. As the Herdman children learn about Christmas and step into the roles of biblical figures like Mary, Joseph, and the angel Gabriel, the audience begins to see them not just as mischief makers, but as children in need of love and understanding. As we learn about all the characters, not just the Herdmans, our supporting characters are pulled in learning alongside with us. Never once do we get a predictable character here until we get pulled into the moral lesson at the end. Now, make no mistake, this is a Christmas movie. One can probably predict the outcome of this film, but when it comes to a Christmas movie, the climax of Christmas feeling is the easiest thing to land. But it's the journey that a Christmas movie takes us on that decides how we feel during the outcome in the climax. In between the clever writing and the smart direction by Dallas Jenkins, who has a resume of simple films alongside smaller Christmas movies, here he fully understands that to make a successful Christmas movie in today's times, it has to be about the characters and less about forteing and exaggerating situational aspects. Jenkins keeps situational scenes with an even deeper focus on how the characters are portrayed. It's never over the top, it's never completely cliche. The characters are always at top of mind on how they would react to a normal situation. The movie also does a great job of highlighting the importance of community. The church members initially react to the Herdman family in a non-Christian way with skepticism and even fear, but as the pageant unfolds, they come to understand that the Herdman's unfiltered view of the world is exactly what the story of Christmas needs. The movie absolutely beautifully illustrates that Christmas is not about tradition or outward appearances, but about the spirit of giving, kindness, and understanding that can come from the most unexpected places. Even when it comes to the clever writing and direction, there are moments that it does raise some questions, which I think the movie does as intentional, to not make a holiday spectacle of itself. What I can appreciate is the mere simplicity of this strategy, just like we saw from 1983's A Christmas Story. For example, the hype of this church and its pageant, which is stated to be put in the city newspapers, it's on cable news, it's wildly publicized, and it's a whole town tradition. When it comes to the main event, the actual pageant, the movie merely just places all the characters we've met along the journey of this movie and just place them in the church seats with no real new characters. I can ignore that mere miss because it gives opportunity to zero in on the reactions and the reflections of the cast that we've met along this journey. The movie also does add some supporting characters, can seem a little cookie cutter and one-dimensional, at times can feel like props to the main characters, but they do the job they're meant to do, and in a way I actually did admire this, even though it may be intentional and may not be. I'm gonna say it was intentional because the emotional reaction I got from it was the appreciation. We were on a journey with all these characters. We were able to go on this journey with all the characters from point A to point Z to see what the moral lesson was in each and every character's eyes. This is a film that celebrates the imperfections of life. It reminds us that the holiday season isn't about getting everything right, but about embracing the people and moments that make us laugh, learn, and grow. The Herdman children, with all their mischief and mayhem, show us that even the most unruly among us can find their place in the story of Christmas and a place in the world without judgment to make room for redemption. The greatest Christmas pageant ever in all its subtlety won't be an instant holiday rewatch or classic, but just like 1983's A Christmas Story, even though not an instant hit, I have a feeling this will sneak its way into the homes during Christmas in the coming years and become on the watch list of many people and families during the holiday season. At least I really hope so. Finally, a Christmas movie that has a moral message that also engages the audience and encourages those that watch to leave the theater with the moral elements to do better, to do good, and then question when the last time they judged somebody and reflect upon that. Santa got my letter this year. I'm giving the best Christmas pageant ever 3.5 stars.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Now, before we get into the rest of the show, make sure you check out my reviews for movies that just became available to rent, buy, or stream now.
Now available on video cassette.
One Man's Doubt Could Change Everything in Juror Number 2, which in this film court of law was proven one of the best movies of the year, receiving 3.5 stars. You better not shout, you better not cry, and prepare to be terrified again in Terrifier 3, which nothing says Christmas cheer better than a chainsaw up the ass crack, receiving 3 stars. What happens behind these walls will change everything in Conclave. That really encouraged me to take some popcorn to church, so watch the drama fly, receiving 3.5 stars. Joy, hope, loss, love, life happens, then you realize you wasted 2 fucking hours watching a movie about time that just wasted your time in absolute utter nonsense in Here, which received 1 star. Humanity's final fight begins at 8,000 feet, which is a monster movie that elevates our urge to ask more questions than it finds time to answer them in Elevation, that received 2 stars. It will never let go, and it's the last thing you'll see in Smile 2, which was clever enough to make me crack a nervous smile, receiving 3 stars. It's the summer when everything changed in Monster Summer, which was a nostalgic trip of summer adventure movies of the 90s, receiving 3 stars. If you can't see a better future, build one in Megalopolis, which should have changed its tagline to If you can see a better movie, then do it, receiving 2 stars. And finally, October 11th, 1975, the revolution begins at 11:30 and Saturday Night, which was chaotic in all the right ways to make it feel like a Saturday night, receiving 3 stars. You can check out those reviews of my previous episodes, and while you do, don't forget to hit follow or subscribe, and please don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Now, before we get into the last set of reviews, there is a podcast that I listen to each and every week, and that's with my favorite Wilson family over at the Super Familiar with the Wilsons podcast. Make sure you check them out. The link to that show will be in the description of this episode. But let's hear from the Super Familiar with the Wilsons podcast now.
The Super Familiar with the Wilsons podcast. You know that family whose house you hung out in when you were a kid? The house was a little loud and chaotic, but always fun, and sometimes felt more home than home. Well, that's us.
We're the Wilsons, and we welcome you into our podcast with silly chat, ridiculous games, and interviews with interesting people.
Like a spin doctor. The Super Familiar with the Wilsons podcast.
Welcome home.
After receiving an unexpected call from her wayfinding ancestors, Moana must journey to the far seas of Oceania and into dangerous, long-lost waters for an adventure unlike anything she's ever faced in Moana 2.
You wanted to come this time.
Little sis! Fix it! You were gone forever.
It was 3 days.
Where are we going?
Before Maui stole Te Fiti's heart, our ancestors wanted to connect our island to all the people of the entire ocean. It's my job as a wayfinder to finish what they started.
Moana, show our people just how far we'll go.
This is a call from the ancestors.
Hidden in a terrible storm, it's an ancient island. Setting foot on its sands would break the curse, bring our people together again.
I know what I have to do. Maui, I could really use your help.
Can I get a chee-hoo?
You will be destroyed, and your wayfinder too.
Now I kind of miss the lava monster.
Ow! Ow!
What if you don't come back?
I'll be back. I promise.
Do I hear people?
Those aren't people. Cockum. You guys, we got this. Bring it on, Coco. Nuts.
In 1966, Walt Disney described himself as a born experimenter and stated he didn't believe in sequels, stating that there are way too many worlds to conquer, going on to say he favored originality and creativity over expanding already explored stories. Walt Disney's vision eventually died with the first theatrical release of 1990's The Rescuers Down Under. Then we had Return to Neverland that hit theaters in 2002, which for the most part weren't horrible movies, and I'm referring to mostly Rescuers Down Under. But if there was a perfect example of how impactful and true Disney's no sequel policy was, let's fast forward to 2024 and take a close look at Moana 2. As I reflected walking out of Moana 2 and started my review, I just had the mere thought that the studio might have well just taken a big ol' steamy Disney dump on those that buy a ticket to this quick cash grab during the holidays. Now, before I get into it, let's just clear this up. Will this movie entertain the kiddos? For some, it will. If we take my screening, that was a pretty packed screening, given the sit-in-your-seat ratio to kids getting antsy in my theater was about the 50% mark, with the first kid starting to talk within about the first 15 to 20 minute mark. And to those other 50% of the kids that did stay in their seats for a majority of the movie and were entertained during that time, I fear this movie will come and go from their memory as quick as it takes for a child to rip open a Christmas present. Now let's start with the premise, which frankly I feel our writers just threw darts at a board of random ideas and hoped something would stick. Or better yet, threw these ideas at a board and it didn't matter if it stuck or not, but rather our writers Jared Bush, Dana Miller, and Beck Smith just picked up all the darts and found a way to stitch everything together. The problem we have with Moana 2 is just merely that. It is blatantly obvious this movie has no idea the direction it wants to go. The real problem is that the stitched ideas is an outline of a quilt, but didn't fill in the center. It's just a blanket with a hole in it. Moana 2 always feels like it's dancing around a bigger idea and never really tying anything together, but rather just merely attempts to find a new conflict to bring our two lovable characters back from the original movie, our Moana voiced again by Lee Carvalho and Maui voiced again by Dwayne Johnson. This movie's pure intent is to bring these two back together just for the mere nostalgic factor. But when you take a movie with little stakes, a small premise, and a small conflict, you only get something that's uninteresting, forgettable, that feels forced, lazy, sloppy, and made me walking out of the theater just asking why. What was the point? Most of the time when watching a movie, especially an animated kids movie, we can grasp a hint at some sort of messaging. Here, our writers throw so much at the screen when it comes to messaging that even me as an adult was having trouble pinpointing what the moral lesson was here. I know there is a point to be told, but it reminded me of a high school student trying to make his essay longer with bigger words, or over-explain details just to hit his word count, or to make it sound better than what it is. Moana 2 dances around so many topics that the dialogue can't support, or doesn't even care to support, and even at times makes it confusing even to me on what this movie wanted to prove, or in reality, didn't care to prove. By the time the credits rolled, I realized this wasn't a film to challenge kids, it wasn't a movie to just entertain, this was a Moana branding. I should have known since the toys came out well before this movie even released. Messaging, character, story, and music, it doesn't matter here. It's all about the in-the-moment branding for the holidays. After close reflection, I ended up questioning myself on maybe I was being a little too hard on this movie. I have a soft spot for animated films, even some of the bad ones, and I can at least give some credit to those that just want to merely entertain as long as that's the intent. Or maybe I was just tired. I found myself dozing off towards the end of the second act. I dislike this movie even more. Now, the point of the story is for Moana to find a sunken island that was separated by a storm god called Nalu, who seeks to have power over all mortals and separates islands of mortals, including sinking an island called Motufitu that connects all the islands to the bottom of the ocean as a center point to connecting all the mortals, including an island full of coconut heads with legs that I still don't fucking understand. But the one thing I did find and appreciated more was the animation that seems darker, smoother, but at the same time less chaotic. Now, if this was because of the lack of effort to create something more than what it was, with overdone editing and overdone visuals, it felt like a sharper TV show. But when it comes to this, it works. I'm glad the animation didn't follow the theme of a movie of trying to make it so bloated with overdone animation and editing to cover up all the flaws. Now, I did get engulfed in a lot of this animation, and I found it more interesting than where the movie story was taking me, so I will give the movie a little bit of credit on that. I actually felt time to take in the visuals and appreciate them, and usually we see the opposite from an animated film, where it floods the screen with dazzling animation, visuals, and editing to take away from the poor writing and storytelling. So I guess if I had to watch this again, I guess I would watch the movie on mute and maybe I'll have a better time. Because even with the musical numbers Moana 2 presents, they are forgettable and add nothing to the engagement, storytelling, or fun factor, and even at times feels thrown in just because. The only song that is remotely just okay, of course, is sang by Dwayne Johnson, entitled Chi Who had one of the two memorable songs from the first movie that we will probably see Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson singing on social media here pretty quick. But besides the too obvious marketable characters, the main problem I think I have isn't with the new added characters, but rather our Moana and the stagnation of our main character. In the first movie, Moana's arc was compelling. She transformed from a young, uncertain girl into a brave, self-assured leader who understood her heritage and embraced her responsibilities. But when it comes to Moana 2, Moana feels static. While she is still portrayed as a capable and strong leader, the film does little to deepen her character or explore new aspects of her personality or things that she's grown and learned from the first film. Her motivations are simplistic and her internal struggles lack the emotional complexity that made her journey in the first film so powerful, so believable, and so relatable. This is yet another example of Moana 2 never really landing a message for kids, or any viewer for a matter of fact. When we lack messaging, stakes, and advancement for our characters to see them in a new light or evolve, we get utter boredom and forgettability. Moana 2 is sadly a generic spliced-together assembly line Disney sequel that was put together in hopes to push merchandise is the only justification I could come to. And in some of our youth and some of our kids, that may be good enough. But as the movie escapes from children's memories, so will the toys. And we are left with nothing but an okay time for a couple of hours with the family at theaters during the holiday season. Now, Moana 2 is an innocent film, but that's also the problem. It's too safe and innocent to the point it doesn't tackle any clear, organized message to even make itself relevant. It is truly one of the most disappointing Disney sequels to date, and just stays the course in a linear fashion to just get through the story that has no captain steering the damn boat. All it is merely multiple stories and ideas floating around in the ocean with no life jackets to keep it afloat. But in fairness, if you are looking to keep the kids busy while somebody else can do the Christmas shopping, the visuals will keep the attention during its runtime. But just like opening up socks on Christmas morning, it will be flung over the shoulder and never thought about again. I'm giving Moana 2 2 stars.
You want to get through it? You just gotta cheat. Wait.
Melody Brooks is navigating the 6th grade as a nonverbal wheelchair user who has cerebral palsy. With the help of some assistive technology and her devoted allies, Melody shows that what she has to say is more important than how she says it. Available to stream on Disney Plus now is Out of My Mind.
Hi, my name is Melody Brooks, and I have cerebral palsy. Go ahead and stare. It's 2002. You've never seen a girl in a wheelchair who doesn't talk before? Here's a list of things I'll never get used to. Butts in my face because people don't see me. Staircases, people who say hi but sound so sad. Obviously, this isn't my voice. I can't talk. And I can sound like whoever I want. So I picked Jennifer Aniston.
Melody exceeds all my expectations.
Why don't you raise your expectations? She loves to learn.
It's hard to be objective about your own daughter's limitations. Hi. I am working on a program to integrate her into the regular classrooms. Who's going to turn the pages of her book? Who's going to take her to the bathroom?
I don't know, but it feels so right.
Hi. Yes, finally.
With this.
Please, pick something good.
This.
That's hideous.
You must be our visitors.
We are.
For 1,000 points. Who was the first European to discover America?
Christopher Columbus.
Melody?
Leif Erikson.
That's correct.
Mr. Deming shouldn't say anything.
Claire.
She's from the special room.
That's enough.
Well, that went well.
What's this?
I met a talker.
How much is it?
$17,000. She wants to call her friends and gossip about boys.
Choose your voice.
You pick. It's your voice.
Hello.
Melody?
Daddy, how are you today?
You're so beautiful.
It just takes some time.
Whiz Kids tryouts are upon us.
Is that a talking computer? Make it say something. Connor, he's nice.
You like him. You want to kiss him.
I made Liz Kids.
Of course, you're a fighter. You have a voice. Let them hear you.
Sometimes I need a push, but I won't be pushed around.
Hey, don't write yourself off yet.
Now, over the years, we have had a lot of movies that tackle chronic illness, disease, syndromes, genetic disorders, and most of these films utilize the message of acceptance or strength through children as the example, but then use adults as the driving force of the message to gain a sense of sympathy, and by the end of the movie, makes us shed a tear or two. And with me, no exception, have gotten sucked into these films, usually because of the good performances or the mere idea that passes through one's head of how hard that must be. And we judge a movie solely based on a happy ending of acceptance or how many tissues we go through by the end of it. Though that might be the filmmaker's intent of a viewer shedding a tear or two, but most of the time we are tricked into believing a movie is about strength and perseverance, but why do we end up crying is the main question. This is where we as viewers have just accepted how this formula is presented without seeing something much different. We as viewers are used to this formula and we judge it with the intent of two different things. Does it have a happy ending or is it going to make us cry? And there's little in between. Disney Plus's Out of My Mind does something different here. It is powerful, emotional, and an inspirational film that captures the complexities of living with a chronic illness while navigating adolescence. But when I use the word emotional here, this is where the message never goes off course. It's emotional because finally we have a movie that focuses not just on an illness, but a teenage girl and her family who have found normality around it because this is their daily life. As movies of the past that follow the kind of the same formula as movie viewers that we've become accustomed to, we nearly just get a glimpse into the movie's families, the situations, and we never truly see a real normality that the families of these previous movies have come accustomed to. Out of My Mind gives us that deeper look to not go for the tissue box, but to understand the family unit. And in a lot of cases in this movie, doesn't teach us necessarily about just a girl with a chronic illness, but to teach us about family. Out of My Mind, again, is based on the critically acclaimed novel by Sharon Draper. The film adaptation stays true to the original's heartfelt storytelling and is an eye-opening exploration of identity, resilience, and the power of the human spirit, from its compelling performance to its sensitive but inspirational portrayal of illness. Out of My Mind is an important film in many cases, offering a deep perspective in how we view the lives around us that will resonate with audiences of all ages and bring back the human spirit of support. The foundation of Out of My Mind is Melody Brooks, played brilliantly by Phoebe Wray-Taylor, a brilliant young girl with cerebral palsy who faces the world's assumptions and limitations about her abilities. The film introduces Melody as a character who defies stereotypes about disability. Rather than being defined by her condition, Melody is shown to be a girl with exceptional intellect and a desire to participate in a world in ways that many might not expect from someone who communicates using a computer and has limited mobility. Melody is unable to communicate completely verbally, but in a fantastic strategy, we get to hear Melody's inner thoughts in a voice that she chose because only she can hear her inner voice, and she picks a voice that she connects with, and that's the voice by Jennifer Aniston. Out Out of My Mind delivers Melody's inner thoughts, that of a normal teenage girl with the want to be accepted, the want to have a voice, and the want to be popular, the want to be seen, and with some teenage attitude. As Melody's parents recognizes her intellect and Melody wanting to succeed and feel normality, this is where she's put in a normal school, where she can test her capabilities. But of course, she is met with the harshness of other teenagers, teachers that feel it's more of a distraction to the class, and being reminded daily that she is different. Now, we do have a lot of normal formalities we have seen before in these types of movies, but what separates this from other films is even though the situations are familiar, Melody's inner dialogue speaks her inner feelings. It's a balance between strength and vulnerability. These are two common denominators that all teenagers struggle with. The movie doesn't treat these feelings any differently. There's a normality, and I want to say comfort, where the film won't allow the viewer to dare judge with her own inner judgments or thoughts. We are side by side with Melody, and she guides us through her experiences. And at times, it felt like a relatability because we've all been teenagers before and we've felt Melody's feelings. Melody's illness is obvious in the film, a teen who has struggled her entire life with the limitations of her body. But Melody's thoughts aren't formula. She finally finds a way to express herself in the classroom setting. She is accepted into an advanced learning program, and though the journey is fraught with obstacles, Melody's determination shines through. This setup is central to the film's emotional arc, as it highlights not only Melody's brilliance, but her unrelenting pursuit of recognition and independence. Out of My Mind was adapted by new writer Daniel Stipelman, who truly does understand the original source material from Sharon Draper. The narratives are realistic, never forced, and mixed with the absolutely stunning performance of Phoebe Wray-Taylor. When it comes to giving us emotional reactions of the narration by Jennifer Aniston, it truly is an engaging performance in all its beauty. I could turn this film on mute and just watch Taylor's reactions, and it tells a story perfectly without even knowing the dialogue. Taylor proves in this film that it's not about the dialogue delivery, but it's about the human element, the human emotion, the facial expressions that really does support how we feel. If there was any movie to show a perfect example of how body language, how eye movements, how mouth movements can affect the storytelling aspect, this would be the movie, because there wasn't one scene that she didn't show emotion that I didn't feel for her. And that's what separates this movie. Those feelings aren't always bad. They're celebratory, they're good, they're emotional, they're sad. All these emotions that Phoebe Taylor presents are believable, and we hit it at our human core. Director Amber Seeley, who showed us her true talent in her 2021 film No Man of God, shows us her personal interest of telling the story through the emotional reactions and expressions of the characters, with the written material almost taking a back seat. She proves with this movie that she was the right director for the job. Seeley has done an exceptional job in bringing a vision of Melody to life with sensitivity and depth, and Phoebe Taylor's execution, we can tell, is very important to her on a personal level. Out of My Mind is an important film for all to watch. It has an inspirational tone, not just for a character with a disability, but the ability to persist in the face of adversity. Melody's journey is not just about overcoming physical challenges, it's about finding her voice and asserting her right to be heard, seen, and understood. The film highlights the importance of independence and self-advocacy and the need to break down the societal barriers that prevent individuals with disabilities from fully participating in the world around them, and also to teach inclusion and understanding to all around us. The movie also touches on the theme of identity. Melody struggles to assert herself, both in the classroom and in her personal life. These mirror the universal challenges of growing up and discovering one's place in the world. It's not just about disabilities, they just use it as an example. This is a prime example to all growing youth. While Melody's experience is shaped by her disability, the feelings of self-doubt, the desire of recognition, and the need for validation are themes that resonate with all audiences, regardless of their background or circumstances. Out of My Mind is one of those rare movies that make me grateful for streaming services. And I don't say that about good movies very often, only because this will allow more people to experience it and take messaging away from it. And though I speak a lot on my show about movies being the last great debate or something to have a conversation about, Out of My Mind will do something a little bit more powerful if you watch it as a family. It will open up vulnerabilities, questions of our own past judgments, and hopefully teach a lesson that the whole family can discuss. That is the power of film, and this is a powerful film. So Disney, I will give you a pass on this one. Out of My Mind made me forget about Moana 2. I'm giving Out of My Mind 3.5 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support for the show by following me on Instagram, Blue Sky, X, Thread, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And please don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you haven't yet checked out the Cult-Worthy Cinema Podcast and the Movie Wire's new show, Back to the Balcony, make sure you do. The link to that show will be in the description of this episode. Until next week, do me a favor. Make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film and support your local movie theaters.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.
Let the credits roll. We say farewell. Join us next time. We'll have more tales to tell.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. When I wake up, I'm getting a CAT scan.